Hey there, my name is Riley Florence. I want to show you how to make a spectator screen with a UMG widget in Unreal Engine like this. Well, first you're going to need a widget. So I'm going to create a new folder, widgets. And just make something dead simple for the example that we're doing here. And we'll just call this spectator screen. And what I'm going to do is I found that about 500 pixels wide is a good size. So I'm just going to type that in, say 500 by, and most TVs that people are going to be looking at or monitors, 1080 gives me about the right size. I like how this works out. So then you just fill it with what you need. So I'm going to put a border. There we go, right? Give that a little bit more. Now we have our widget. We need some way to update this, so we're just going to say it's a variable and score. This isn't really the point of the tutorial, so I might skip this. Okay. So that is like, that's our widget. This is how simple it was in the example I showed. And we'll give it an outline just because it's more fun. And you can put an animation on there if you want. So perfect. So now all that needs to get called when that happens. Okay, so we are done with that spectator screen UMG site. And you can build whatever you want right here. Just this is kind of what's important, is to know the width that you want. And I put that 1080 just so it's clear to me of how it's probably going to look on almost every screen. But this is the magic number. How wide is it? Now, let's close that out. What we'll also need to do is create a new game mode. And this is kind of the secret sauce. I'm not sure why it works the way it does, but it does. If you come in and make a game mode and you want to, let's see, which one did I want? Yeah, this one has a little bit more stuff on it. So we'll just say game mode, spectator tutorial, spectator. For some reason, game modes have a viewport. Don't know why. Nothing ever shows up that is here, but we're going to use that to our advantage. What we're going to do is add a widget component right here, and we're going to assign the spectator screen that we just made to that widget. And right here, we can determine the draw size. So this right here matches, where did I put it? This right here. Just type in what you have there right here. So 500 by 1080. And now we have this widget that, again, won't render anywhere in the world, but it will make a render target, and that's what we're going to use. But first, because it never shows up anywhere, the way that Unreal works, if a widget's not on the screen, it doesn't get updated, it doesn't get rendered. Because this isn't on the screen in the world, then it won't do that. But what we can do is say tick when off screen. And this will make sure that it still gets updated and exists even if there's no camera looking at it. So that is kind of the magic that needs to happen. So the next thing that we're going to need to do is create a function that we can call whenever, because you probably don't want the spectator screen on or this widget on the screen all the time. Like if you're in a menu or whatever, it doesn't really make sense to have this. But when they finally get into the game, then you want to call it and say, yes, show that widget, show the score or whatever your widget is, have that be on the spectator screen. So we're going to say show, we'll call it spectator widget. That's a long name, but it's clear. So now what we're going to do is we need to get this right there, right? That widget that we just made. And then we're going to, actually, I'm going to do this. This makes more sense. You don't need it ticking when it's in the menu. So we're going to set it to exist when it's on the screen. And then when we make a function that takes it off the screen, we'll do the opposite. We'll tell it not to tick. So let's come back here and just take that off. Don't tick when off screen. There we go. That feels better. Spectator screen. So we're going to change this spectator screen mode. The default is single eye cropped to fill. We're going to switch it to texture plus eye. So it's going to take one of the eyes and that will get rendered on the screen, and then a texture will also be rendered on the screen. Now that we've set it to have the spectator screen mode be texture plus eye, we need to say, well, set the spectator screen texture. But where do we get that texture? This is why we made this widget the way we did. We can get the render target because it's being rendered out to a render target somewhere in the background, but we can grab a hold of it and put it in right there. And that will do what we need it to do. But the next thing we have to do is assign how we want that to lay out on the screen. So there's another helpful node called set spectator texture plus eye layout. And when I found this, I was super confused. I didn't quite understand how it worked. It took me a little bit to figure it out. So let me explain how this works. I'm gonna actually open up Photoshop. Okay, so let me just explain how this works. When you have your screen, the monitor or spectator screen that people are watching on, it's like this. And normally the screen has just whatever VR eye is being rendered right here. But we're saying we want to add a texture somewhere on this screen. And Unreal thinks of it as having a rectangle minimum and maximum, and then a texture minimum and maximum. And so how that works is you have a 0 to 1 scale in both the X and the Y. And so when you set the minimum, you're saying you can think of it as like the left side of it. So we're going to start here, and how far do we want the eye to render? We could have it render all the way across and then overlay the texture however we want. It can be a floating square, or you can do it how I am doing it in this example is something over here on the side. And I actually don't want to crop anything from the view of the VR player. So I'm actually going to squish it a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal. people don't notice that much. And so we're actually going to set it from the rectangle minimum of the eye at 0, and its maximum is somewhere around here at like 0.8 on the X and then 1 on the Y. But then for my, well, we'll do for our widget, I want it to be 0.8 as the minimum and 1 as the max. And then it will be, again, 0 to 1 because it goes all the way from top to bottom. If that makes sense. I hope it does. So if you wanted, let me just show you. So if you wanted it to be like a, let me clear this out. If you wanted your widget to render like right here, you could totally do that. And it would be like a 0.2 to 0.6. And then this is probably like 0.5 to 0.9. Right? So you're just defining where those corners are, and it's on a scale of 0 to 1. It's how Unreal does so many things. Everything's a 0 to 1. Okay, so we are back in Unreal, and we're going to set that layout for how we want it to be on the screen. So the eye, what's being rendered from the headset, we're going to say top left corner is the minimum, so 0, 0. And then how far to the side do we want it to go? Around 0.8. It might get cropped a little bit, but that's fine. And then 1 is the max because we want it to go all the way to the bottom. And that's that 1 again, if you remember right here, 1. And then for the texture rectangle minimum, like where do we want it to start? We're going to actually do a little bit of remapping to a float value to figure that out. So first I need to make this a vector 2D because I'm about to input something here. And it's going to be map range clamped. All right, so to work out where we want that to be on the screen, what that texture rectangle minimum is, we need to think of the screen that it's going to be on. And you have like pixel 0 over here and then pixel 1920 over here. But where is 1920 minus 500? Because we need to minus that 500 right there and figure it out. It's about right here, right? But on that 0 to 1 range, what does that equal? There's probably a way to figure it out, but I think that how I'm doing it is simple enough and it works. And then if you need to change the widget size, you don't have to go rerun the math. You just do it like this. So you can say my range, and because I'm coming from the right to the left, we're swapping it a little bit. We're saying 1920 to 0. If you wanted to have your widget on the left-hand side, you would swap these and say 0, 1920. And then the output range is 0 to 1. And all we have to do is type in how wide our widget is. And because it's 500, that's what we said right here, right? It's 500. It's going to remap 500 out of that 19 to 20 range, or 1920 to 0 range, to somewhere in 0 to 1. And then you put it in this vector and put it right there. And so now we're saying, come in wherever that point is, I don't really know, and the y is the top 0. And now my max is going to be 1 and 1, because it's going from whatever this magic number is right there, not really sure what it is, to 1 and 1. So it's filling in all of this. All right, so that's the blueprint logic that gets it on the screen where we want it. Now we just have to tell the project settings to use the game mode that this belongs to. And we'll come project settings, game mode, and we'll change it to that game mode that we were just working in, right? The spectator screen tutorial. The other thing is now we need to call that function. Whoop. It was already there. So the other thing we'll need to do is call that function, and we can say show spectator widget. I just realized something. This isn't going to work because the delay actually has to be between this set tick when off screen to getting the render target. And I can't do a delay right here. You can't do a delay in a function. It doesn't let you. So I'm actually going to pull this out. This is a little hackish, but it will work. I'm actually going to create an event called set screen or set spectator screen. And I'm actually going to put, well, here, let me show you. I'm going to put a Boolean on this. So anytime I call it, I can have it swap between setting the spectator screen to have the widget or not. So we can always just call this and say show screen, and we will have a branch come off of it. And if it's to true, then we will do that, and then we will delay just a tiny little bit, and then call that function. Whoops. And then call the function, not the event that I just made. We didn't want to make a loop, right? So this is what's going on. Anywhere in any other logic, we can just call the game mode and say set the spectator screen, and we'll say show screen, or I guess we should say show widget. And if it's true, then we say, okay, widget, you start ticking, give it a second to do so it doesn't fail when it does this, and then put it on the screen. When it's false, let's make a new function, and it's pretty simple. What we're gonna do is say hide spectator widget. We can just turn it off, and then we can set, screen mode to the default of single eye crop to fill. And then that will be your normal VR spectator screen that you're used to. And now back here, we can just call hide if it's false. So now anywhere else, let's just pretend we were down here, like in our dunk tank, whatever. We could just come and call, if we get the game mode, cast to our tutorial. Now we have this function of set, or this event. And if we have it unchecked, then it will be standard VR, nothing on the side. If we check it, then it will have the widget on the side. So you can imagine, like in a menu, there's no widget. When they load up the game, then call this and put the widget on. And so there you have it, right? Like that should do it. I'm going to hit play and see if we get what we want. Let me just double check this. No, because I never did set spectator screen, off begin play, and say go. Now, there it is. We have our widget on the side, but it won't update yet because we haven't told it to. The next thing is I'm going to have an event here called update score, I guess, and we'll get the widget and say get the child component, I think is what it's called. No. Let's get user widget object. That's what you want. And so that, when you call this, it's looking all the way into this right there. And so any functions or events that are on the actual widget, we can call now. And what did I call that one? Update score. Look at that. I have to cast update score. So now, somewhere in the game, I can call something into the game mode, which can talk directly to that widget. And in this case, I'm just doing the update score. So in my dunk tank, I have over here, the thing, when you hit it, it gets dunked and it plays a timeline for various reasons. And then there's, within the timeline, I have a moment in time right here that says actually update the score. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to say get the game mode, cast to our new game mode that we made, and say, is this the game mode that I'm hoping it is? And then I can say update score. And it will call this right there, which then goes and calls this right here, which will take the current score, add one, set the text, and play that little animation. And so how that's going to look is like this. Okay, let's see if I can do this thing. All right, well, thank you for watching. That is how you make a spectator screen with a UMG widget, all in Blueprints, no C++. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you want to see something special, let me know. Maybe I know how to do it. Maybe I can figure it out. Either way, thank you. See ya.